got Scott Anderson. He's on the line. He's from Unity. He's got a lot of depth, or he's got a lot of industry experience. He's a vet. Let's hop on and talk to Scott.
Hey, how's it going?
What is happening, man?
What, brother?
It's going all right.
Yeah, it's we were talking about this for a while. It's so awesome to have you on.
Yeah, it's been a conversation, I'm glad to be here. I guess I could start talking a little about my background, like what I do in Unity.
Sure.
So at Unity, I'm a graphics engineer on the Spotlight team, which actually Ray was on a little bit earlier, and Ray is my boss. So Ray's the technical director of Spotlight. He runs the whole team, actually. So, we had a little bit of a Unity representation, just kind of by happenstance today. But yeah, so I work with the Spotlight team in general. Works with various AAA partners to kind of highlight the engine, and a lot of it is like Unity doesn't really make games, right? There's demos and there are games like things that are made within Unity, but Unity doesn't really make games. So with Spotlight, we work with partners to help them finish games, and then we try and bring those features back to Unity so everyone can use them. So yeah, it's been great. I've been there about a year. But yeah, I'm kind of here to not just talk about my experiences. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had Advanced Warfare up, trying to shed light on what you've worked on in the past. But that's really cool. You were at Facebook before?
Yeah, before Unity, I was at Facebook. I worked on Oculus. On Oculus Home specifically, and I worked on Facebook Horizon, and there I actually ended up building two visual scripting languages, but I kind of architected and designed and wrote a lot of the code for, if you get in the Facebook Horizon beta, for the visual scripting language there, that was a good experience. We're going backwards a little bit, but kind of after, the reason why Advanced Warfare showed up is because I worked at Sledgehammer Games when I first moved out to the Bay Area. So I worked on Advanced Warfare and Call of Duty World War II. I kind of did the shader for the threat grenade effects, which is why that video showed up. But then I got really, really into VR. So I worked at Funomena for about a year and a half on a game called Luna. And did a lot of VR interaction stuff for that. There's kind of a creative mode where you can place things in that. There's the Luna trailer. And after Luna, I think we had a couple people bring up, I think it was Tony earlier brought up, having kids. You think about finance a little bit more, and it's like, being an indie game developer is great. But in the Bay Area, if you kind of want to make a little bit more, you have to go into tech. So, and I think that was a good opportunity to bridge into tech, because the Oculus acquisition had happened pretty recently, and a lot of tech companies were looking to bring in people in VR, right? And that's died off a little bit, but VR is still growing. It's still Quest 2 came out recently. It's doing phenomenal.
I just got my Quest 2, so trying to find dope stuff to play around with in there.
Yes, so kind of as we know, VR didn't necessarily blow up to smartphone levels in 2 years or something, or console levels even, but it's becoming a bigger market, and I think in the coming years we're going to see it being a better space for people to get into. But yeah, when I was there and I was building a lot of visual scripting tools and game creation tools, and working in Unity also, I was just maybe I should just go to Unity and work on the engine and
really that's how it came about. That's
for a couple of different reasons. So
I remember when you were trying to work out this problem, maybe I'm wrong, but you were trying to figure out how to fold space so you can infinitely move in this particular room, and you were explaining how that works. Am I imagining things, or was that something that you were
No, that's definitely, like, I didn't actually work on that too much. Like, there's a thing called redirected walking, right? Where, and some games actually use it. There are some shipping VR games out there that use it. The problem is you need a little bit larger space than a lot of people actually ended up playing VR in.
Yeah.
So, like, off the top of my head, I can't think of the games that actually shipped with it, but you can basically do a thing where you, like, walk down a corner, and walk into a new room, and then the game directs you to basically walk in circles, but it feels like you're walking through a much bigger space because you're, like, walking around corners consistently. And the bigger the space you have, the better of a feeling you can do. So, like if you look at The Void, you know, like the Star Wars experience and some of the bigger location-based things that were actually doing pretty well before COVID and got kind of killed off by COVID, unfortunately, they use that trick a lot too, because they had basically kind of like, garage size space or whatever, shuffle a couple players through that space, or a paintball arena size space, shuffle a couple players through that space, but they wanted to feel like a much bigger space, so they would gate you with doors and stuff and have you turn corners and walk kind of in these circles, but it felt like you were walking through a larger level. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Where do you see, like, where do you want to see games go now, as far as, like, the stuff that you're involved in at Unity? What's sort of the next level of, like, development that you want to see happen?
It's a good question. I mean, I think like what I want to see in general is I want to see the accessibility of game development increase even more, right? And, like, we've talked a lot about different game engines, here, that how, like, people can make games part-time as hobbyists, right? And they can be, like, very extremely impressive, fully featured, funded commercial games, right? Like, so we talked about Unity, we talked about Unreal, we talked about RPG Maker, we talked about all these accessible tools, and there's new stuff that's come out recently, like Dreams, and let's push it even further, right? But I think we can go even further than that, right? Like, a lot of the level of accessibility, like, you can't, like, it's hard to, as a hobbyist that's, a skilled artist, to just sit down and build a game still, right? Yeah. It's a lot easier than it was back in the day. Definitely back when I started, definitely back when Tony or Ray started, right? But, like, you can imagine, you can extrapolate that out, like, 10, 15 years in the future, where you have AI that can build stuff for you, or you have, like, massive asset libraries where, you can still make something that looks great, without being able to touch the art, right? Like, everyone kind of brought up, like, there are a lot of people who have a wide variety of skills in design and programming and art, but they always have, like, a weak spot, right? Like, oh, I can't do animation, I'm not really good at art, like, I don't like to do level design, so it's like, oh, when I do a prototype or something, it's like I push myself toward games that don't do level design, but it's like, oh, well, if you have tools that can assist you with that, right? Like, and obviously there are other ways to do that, right? Like, there's a reason why games are made in teams for the most part. Like, almost every commercial game, especially a successful one, is made in a team. But even then, like, your team might have gaps, or your team might have things that, like, you need help with, right? So, like, I think increasing the accessibility, like reducing the complexity of programming, even, like, in Unity, I'm working on DOTS a lot, which is data-oriented tech stack, right? And it doesn't necessarily improve accessibility and the access of, like, making it easier to script games for people, but I think it improves accessibility greatly in the sense of, like, it makes it a lot easier for people to make very high-performance games that have programming experience in a way that would be very hard or impossible before, right? So yeah, I mean, I think increasing accessibility, and that's happening through game engines right now. It'll happen through, kind of like games like Roblox and like, kind of these online metaverse type things like Facebook Horizon, right? So
like the
we're gonna see it, but modding community type stuff, but more accessible than traditional modding, right? Like,
for sure.
So yeah, I'd really like to see a platform where just like anyone who felt like they wanted to make a game, like regardless of skill level, can do it. And there are things where you can do that now, right? Like anyone could probably get Twine and make a game in Twine, right? Anyone could probably make a level in Mario Maker.
That's
but
true.
like, I want to see like both the ease of use and the depth of titles being able to build with those type of things, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I'm excited about.
What kind of challenges, or have you had any challenges as a Black engineer or developer have you faced? I gotta throw that in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like I think and we went back to like me being at like Sledgehammer Games and being at Oculus and being at these different places, right, and Unity and Funomena. But like before that, I started a studio called Enemy Airship for a title called Shadow Physics, right? And Shadow Physics never shipped, but it was like one of the first indie funded titles. Like, I was I think the only Black person with on-screen time at all in Indie Game the Movie, right? Like the special edition had
that's
developer
right.
interviews,
remember.
right? And I think I was the only one. And like there was a lot of like where that was filmed at Tig Jam, and there was just a lot of things going on that were like problematic, to say the least, right? Like, and just being in that space and being one of the few, like I think myself and like Tyreek Plummer back in those days were some of the few people at like Tig Jam and stuff. And I know you've been in indie space really early on, but like especially early days. Now I think there's a lot more people and it's a lot more mixed or comfortable with space. But especially early days, like it was kind of a trap, like in a lot of ways. Where like
it was like a magnetism when you saw someone who was Black, just so you could relate. I remember at bar, I think I called you Tyreek at one point, and I felt like a racist for some reason.
Things like that would happen. I was called like Token, like straight up by people. Like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I don't want to get into it too much.
We don't need to.
Now. But like, I think that was one of the challenges, right? Like definitely funding was a challenge, right? Where I co-founded Enemy Airship with a white co-founder, right? And like it's interesting because the game was his idea, but it was entirely my implementation. Like I started it, I wrote the initial prototype by myself, right? And then I brought him on board because like I said, I don't like to do level design. So I was like, oh yeah, you're a designer, can you do level design? And it's like, cool. And we kind of worked that way, right? And I think it was Tony who said like earlier who said like design was kind of or ideas, not design. Ideas were like a dime a dozen, right? So like, the idea is cool, but a lot of people had that idea, right? And like, there have been a lot of shadow games. There are a lot of shadow games still coming out. Like Shady Part of Me just shipped. There's a game called In My Shadow that is like, I feel like kind of captures that shadow physics spirit in a lot of ways, in the way it works. So, and there were ones before like Contrast came out, like, before, like, around the same time Shadow Physics was being made. It was being made. So, it was challenging because like having, and you hear about this in like VC and tech and stuff like that, right? But like for me, it wasn't just like race in this case. It was like also me being like more junior to the industry back in the day, back in those days, right? This was like 12 years ago at this point. But yeah, it was challenging having like, being in situations where, you're getting funded and like you're a co-founder, but you're not necessarily, you don't fully have a seat at the table. You're kind of halfway in the room, right? So like that was definitely a challenge.
So in this scenario, you built the game, most of the game.
Yeah.
Brought in a co-founder to help you, with level design and some like VC pitch stuff, but you weren't allowed to sort of have a say in the direction of where it was.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. I mean, I did have a say. I shouldn't say I had no say. That's not true at all. But like, there were definitely strange
Strength
you know,
dynamics.
power dynamics and stuff there.
Yeah, there's like I totally get it. There's like some undercurrent stuff. It's not always blatant. Like I'll just be honest too. Even with the mix, there'll be certain times where I'll be in a meeting, and because I look like a young dude, I'm like pushing 40, but they will not look at me. They will look at the other person in the room, and I won't even. And I'm like, yo, this is actually my fucking decision. You know what I mean? So you should actually pay attention to what I'm saying too, and so I get defensive in that standpoint. And sometimes it's nothing wrong, but it's just because I've had that built up, those scenarios build up so much that everything I start taking defensively. You know what I mean? And that's just because of a reoccurring theme that happens.
And it's a challenge, and you hear about it a lot. But I feel like that's one of the more challenging things. It's happened to me in workplaces as well, right? So it's not just like regarding funding or whatever, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And also, like you mentioned, like young looking, right, and like pushing 40. I think we're like both in the same boat, or like a lot of people think younger than I am.
I'm not senior, right? I've been here for 15 years. You know what I'm saying? Like you were saying, I really appreciate that too. You were saying like I was in there.
So you just need to like whiten the hair on your face.
Yeah, I need to whiten the hair on my face and just like put my face in the sun for no reason, and get wrinkled up real quick, but.
So what advice you give sort of new developers entering this industry? I mean, obviously, we're focusing on Black developers trying to get into this industry. So like, what would you sort of things that you ran into or like stumbling blocks for you? You would say, all right, this is the things you need to do in order to like make it, in order to like really get a foothold in this industry.
I mean, it's like obviously your skills and your knowledge need to be like both. You need to be able to demonstrate them to people, right? So like, obviously I'm primarily an engineer, right? So I'm gonna come and say like, you just need to have like decent computer science fundamentals. Depending on what your specialty and what your area is, you need to like know some of that regarding gaming, right? Like I think now there's probably a much better path to just be kind of like, if you're a good programmer, to just be like a good generalist gameplay programmer and not really go super deep in graphics or animation or anything like that. But like, it helps to be deep in at least one field and like, know how like DirectX or OpenGL or some like low-level GPU engine, assuming graphics actually works, right? Know how to build a physically based renderer from a basic standpoint, right? Just have those fundamentals down, right? But kind of after that, right? After I can demonstrate my skills, which means building portfolio piece if you're an artist, building a small game. Honestly, I'd recommend everyone to build a small game, especially nowadays. Like just do it. Like do it with a small team, do it by yourself, doesn't matter. Just do it, right? Because if you want to get in games, like just make games, like find a way to do it.
Yeah, that seems to be
in your free time or as a hobbyist. Yeah. But like if you want to get a job in the industry, a lot of time you need to go beyond that and demonstrate like you're a decent specialist and can fit into a role that they have on their website or whatever. But like, beyond being able to demonstrate your skills, networking is extremely important, because if no one knows you in this industry, and other people have brought up like it's kind of insular, right? And it's like, but at the same time, people are looking for people Black right now. So if you're Black specifically, right, like, and you can demonstrate, like, reach out to myself, reach out to Justin, reach out to Ray, reach out to the people you see, right? And like, I believe people will be helpful. I try and help it. I try and help anyone, and it's not like I'm just want to help like Black people or anyone, right? Like I try, or marginalized people or underrepresented people. I try and help anyone that will reach out to me and seems that they have something to offer, because you never know where people are going to be and where people want to go, right? But yeah, definitely reach out, go to events if you can, especially during COVID. Like a lot of events are online, so you don't, like, before there was a barrier to travel, there was a barrier, you going to GDC was expensive for people, they couldn't get there, right? Like, but now like a lot of events are very cheap, like $5 or $10 or just free, to go to, right? And you can network, you can get on a Zoom and talk to people, and like everyone's in the room, right? Like, so, you know, I just recommend like network as much as you can. Like, you know, if you're of the right age, like if you're high school or college age, like I'd recommend getting involved with Game Heads or a program like that, because then that's automatic access to industry mentors, right? And like people at the top level of the industry like have been doing it for a long time, right? Like, so, and it's not just that they're gonna, and I'm a Game Heads mentor myself, so I should say we, but it's not that we're just gonna you know, kind of guide you like around how to make games and stuff, but people are actually gonna, like, when they know you, they can think about, I have this internship or I have this junior role that's opened up. Who do I know that I want to reach out to and refer? Right? Like, they're going to think about you. They're not going to think about someone that they don't know because they don't know them. Right?
Yeah, so, I'm just going to jump in because, like, with Alfonso's son, Joe, like, I have played his game at Gameheads, at the Gamehead showcase, and I loved it immediately. And I was like, how can I help? And then, you know, I played it more, and then I was like, how can I plug him in this place, you know, with the mix, and who do I know, like at, you know, at Microsoft and that type of thing. And that's what we need, you know, in general. So that's some super good advice.
It's an amazing thing. I think the thing that folks don't understand is there's some statistic that like 86% of all jobs are through personal networks or that are filled across all industries. So it's like, if that means only 14% of the jobs are like available for you to directly apply. So everything else is based on a network. And if you are a marginalized community, you don't have access to that larger network. So we have to actually purposely connect with one another in this industry in order to support one another. So.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's definitely true in the game industry. So, you know, I don't know the exact statistics or anything game industry specific, but I can tell you from like anecdotally from experience that like it's much easier to get a job if you know somebody than it is if you just go blind. Like, I think, you know, I've applied to a lot of jobs, and I think there have been maybe 1 or 2 jobs or even got a call back where I just did a blind apply on the website, like, period. And there was one where I got an offer where I did a blind apply. And that's when I had like industry experience. And I just like did a blind apply on LinkedIn, and they happened to interview me and give me an offer. But every other job except like really early, like my first job, which was worked on a Stargate MMO, my first industry job, not my first game, because I like early on in college and like out of college, I did indie games part-time, and I shipped a couple games. So that's kind of that portfolio piece, right? I worked on Stargate Worlds back in the day, which actually like a decent amount of people played because they went into alpha, you know, open alpha, right? So they're like 2,000 players or something, right? And like, you know, I worked on did like animation and abilities kind of programming stuff for the most part, you know, so a little bit of graphic stuff and some other random things, but yeah, you know, it didn't ship. Like I've yet to ship an MMO, and I've worked on 2 of them. But
wait, what was the other one?
I worked on 38 Studios project Copernicus, which is like the Kingdoms of Amalur MMO that like burned up in flames because of Rhode Island government and like herd chilling and like all that political maneuvering stuff. But yeah, I worked on that also, and that didn't ship.
How long did you work on it?
I wasn't even there a year before it shut down.
Cool.
So
I know that happens a lot. We appreciate you so much joining us, Scott. And where can we find out more about you and what you got going on?
It's probably best to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle's there. It's at Impossible Scott. Usually I'll keep abreast. Like if you want to look up, you know, Scott Anderson on LinkedIn or something, follow me on LinkedIn. That's also works for more professional connections, but I think Twitter is probably the best right now
Yeah, definitely hit up Scott. He's got a wealth of information, vet in the industry. If you ever need to try to connect with, build your network, now I'm blasting you out. All these people are going to hit you up. You know what I mean? But
whatever. I want to get my follower count up, so that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me, guys.